Good morning in Kiaura. My name is Shobhit, and I am a solution engineer at Microsoft on Azure AI and apps. So you might be thinking, news and business application summit what I am doing. So a bit of a history about myself, and then I'll try to connect the dots why I'm here as well. So some of you might know I have worked on our low-code platform, Dynamics Power Platform, for almost 14 years. Implemented a lot of solutions across the board. Last 18 to 24 months, I have also worked with a lot of our customers across Australia and New Zealand in building agentic AI solutions using our low-code platform, which is Copilot Studio. Right? A few months ago, I transitioned into this new role where now I look after Microsoft Cloud and related technology. So look after more pro code sort of stuff, which does include Foundry. And again, as Eva mentioned previously, Foundry has gone through, just like every other product, Microsoft has gone through a number of changes in terms of names from AI Studio to AI Foundry, and now we call it Microsoft Foundry, right? So the reason why I'm here today to talk to you is about looking at some of the patterns that I'm seeing getting built over the conversations I've had with customers and partners, where Copilot Studio and Foundry can be used together to create agentic AI solutions which can scale for an enterprise. So I do have a couple of use cases that I will talk about as well, and some of the key capabilities where we can combine the power of Copilot Studio and Foundry. So instead of thinking of them as an either or platforms like either Copilot Studio or Foundry, we can look at it as one single platform where we can leverage Copilot Studio's capabilities as well as Foundry's capabilities together. Now, we have heard quite a bit about agents. Everybody knows what an agent is. Everybody has built an agent in this room. Awesome. Right. So essentially what an agent is, and you can see some of the components that you might be familiar with. But the most important component from an AI agent perspective is the underlying foundational model or the LLM that drives the control. So instead of writing a traditional software program where you define the flow or the control of the program, LLM is helping driving that. So you provide some kind of instructions, you provide some kind of tools, you provide some kind of knowledge on which an agent can be grounded. And then the large language model, along with some of the user prompts and so on and so forth, takes care of how the agent will behave, how the agent will look at those instructions, how the agent needs to pick up the tools and so on and so forth, and then come back with some kind of responses and results back to the end user. And that is where agents are quite differentiated from traditional way of building any sort of software application as such. Now, if we look at Microsoft stack that we currently have, there are multiple ways in which you can build an agent. So you can start, and again, it depends. Again, with Microsoft or with any technology, the answer usually starts with it depends, right? So on what side of spectrum you are, what your use case sort of looks like, and I will talk about a bit of decision tree at a later point of time as well today. But if you are completely non-technical, but let's say if you have a lot of business knowledge, you can start off with a no-code approach of building an agent by extending Microsoft 365 Copilot. So 365 Copilot already sort of is a first-party agent that has access to your work profile, your meetings, your files, and so on and so forth. You can extend that to give it more grounding and then create an agent for your individual use as such. Then we have extensions across our low-code platform like Copilot Studio, where you can extend to your line of business applications. For example, your CRMs and ERPs to do something on user's behalf, maybe create records, update records, get status of records, and so on and so forth. Or if you are pro code, if you are a professional developer, or you have to have more control on how you build an agent, more control on how you model your data, more control on how you index your knowledge articles, for example, you can go full developer mode and use things like Microsoft Foundry and Visual Studio to go ahead and build an agent using bespoke methods. As I said, today is more about trying to see where we can find patterns where we can combine the power of low code as well as no code together, right? Now, when we look at some of the components that are required from an agent perspective, of course, as I said before, there are underlying sort of foundational models that powers agents reasoning. So that is the think tank behind the agent, how agent thinks, how agent sort of go from one point to another point, how agents selects the right tools, the right actions, the right workflows to execute, or look at the right knowledge sources, for example. So the foundation models or the large language models are the most important thing from an agent's perspective. Uh, Over and above, you can also ground your agent into some enterprise knowledge. So let's say if you're building an agent for your enterprise, you can provide access to your internal knowledge sources. And we'll take a look at that as an example soon. So by that, you can ground your, or you can create sort of boundaries for your agent to look into resources, look into knowledge sources, which are important for your own organization rather than just going anywhere as such. Apart from retrieval, an agent can also go do things on your behalf, and that's where tools comes into play. So again, we have had a number of different changes. We call them plugins, we call them actions, and now we are calling them tools. I don't know what we're going to call them tomorrow, but tools again is a way for you to ask an agent to do something on your behalf. Just not find information for me. Go ahead, create a record for me. Go ahead, execute a backend workflow for me. Go ahead, seek an approval for me, and so on and so forth. Now, a lot of time we think of an agent in a way where the agent will be triggered or will be invoked by a human intervention. So I, as a human, provide a prompt or write a message. Hey, can you do this for me? Hey, can you find this for me in natural language? An agent is going to go ahead and do that. But now we are starting to see that agents can also be triggered autonomously using triggers like system events. So when, for example, a new file is created, when a new record is created, when a new employee record is added into HR database, start the employee onboarding agent, for example, right? So you can give agent some sort of autonomous execution. You can always have human in the loop if you need to. And then there might be some user experience, depending on whether your agent needs to have user experience or it needs to be an agent which needs to work on its own as such. The most important thing that brings all of these things together is the orchestrator. So orchestrator is the layer or is the core engine that combines all of these different components together and brings them to life, right? So in case of our low code platform, Copilot Studio act as one. So Copilot Studio is an orchestrator, for example. When we talk about pro code, a capability that Microsoft has, the orchestrator that we have is Microsoft Foundry's agent service. So that act as an orchestrator. And that is, again, as I said, is an important thing for all of us to sort of understand. Now, when we look at the tools that we have at our sort of on our side, as I said, again, we have the choice of tools. One of the most important things to understand is whether you use first-party copilots, whether you use Copilot Studio, or whether you start using Foundry to build an agent or to extend an agent or use some of the Foundry services. All of this is using Foundry as the underlying technology. So every single agent that you build, whether you use Copilot, extend it with Copilot Studio or with Foundry, everything is powered by Foundry. So underlying every technology, so every platform is an abstraction layer over and above what Foundry can provide. With low code, what you get like rapid authoring, right? You can start quickly. You can build things quickly. You have a canvas where you can drag and drop stuff. You don't have to write a lot of code. You have flexibility to write or change some of the code if you need to, but you don't have to. You can drag and drop stuff and go with that. You can also extend it to go ahead and, let's say, connect to your line of business applications through our Power Platform connectors, which we have how many now? 1600, 1700, I think. We have so many connectors that you can use to extend to your LOB applications, again, without needing to write a lot of code. When we talk about operationalizing and monitoring your low-code agents, we have now managed environments, or we can use solutions, for example, for deploying. So you can use in product pipelines to do the deployment as well. So again, the idea is to take something, build quickly, deploy quickly, and prove the value of the platform. That's where the low code platform like Copilot Studio shines. On the other side of the spectrum, if you need more control, so if your organization needs more control in how do we evaluate the agent, how do we observe the agent, how do we create, or how do we use the agents build within our own existing DevOps pipelines, for example, that's where you can start looking at pro code solutions like Foundry. The other example is if you need to, let's say, extend some of the models that are there and fine tune those to your own sort of requirements. So we have a number of different models. We have spoken about that. Microsoft provides models both in Copilot Studio, and then we also have more than 1900 models that are available in Foundry. But you can pick those models up and then change those models or train those models to your own specific industry use case. So you can train them on terms that, for example, are only used in New Zealand around some of the use cases, if there are any use cases like that. So you can actually go ahead and do that if you need to. Now, I'll quickly talk about this last bit, which is highlighting some of the architecture around the agent platform. And again, you can see that what I'm trying to sort of talk about here is that if you look at Copilot Studio or if you look at Foundry, the capabilities are there across the board. And there is also a seamless integration now. So one of the announcements in Ignite was now you can actually invoke or do an agent to agent sort of orchestration from Copilot Studio to Foundry. So you can actually invoke an agent that is built in Foundry from Copilot Studio. I think that's in preview at this point of time, but that is where you can have a full multi-agent orchestration, where one agent is built using one platform and other agent is built using another platform doing something else as well, and you can delegate your work to that agent if required as such. Now, so I at the beginning I spoke about how some of the patterns we are sort of looking at that are getting emerged from conversations, work that we are doing with our customers and partners. So I'm going to talk about a very simple use case. Again, this use case, I've tried to strip off any industry or any particular, sector as such. This use case can be applied to anyone in a general manner. So any organization usually has an internal IT help desk. We have at Microsoft as well, which help us with managing our devices, making sure our devices are up and running. So any organization, whether it's public sector, financial institution, retail, whatever it is, they will have some kind of an internal IT help desk. So if I have a problem with my device as an employee, I can maybe contact them through email, ring them up on some kind of a number, or maybe send them a message as well, if I have some sort of bot enabled as well. So the idea here was to simplify that process and take the workload away from humans. So create an internal IT help desk chatbot, which can solve some of the routine sort of queries. For example, how do I order a new mouse? So my mouse is not working. How do I get batteries? Or I have some issues with my laptop. How do I get it resolved? Some of those queries, which could be considered routine, a chatbot can solve quite easily. So we thought of looking at solutions. Now, the work that a human agent needs to do once a query is received, there is a set of knowledge articles. Let's say they are sitting in SharePoint, for example. So we have a SharePoint library or maybe multiple SharePoint libraries where a bunch of articles are sitting. So the human agent would need to go in those places and find the relevant article and come back with a response based on the user's query. So all this heavy lifting, we can do it using Copilot Studio quite easily. So we start off with Copilot Studio as the orchestrator. So it is our sort of bot UI, where we start off with this low-code rapid build. It can very easily connect to knowledge sources like SharePoint, and not just SharePoint. It can also connect to third-party knowledge sources, which are sitting outside of Microsoft if you have Graph APIs enabled. And that takes matter of minutes, actually. It doesn't even take hours, weeks to actually connect to those knowledge sources. So if your knowledge is sitting into, let's say, ServiceNow, Confluence, Azure Wikis, very easily your Copilot Studio can connect to those knowledge sources as such. The other advantage of using Copilot Studio in this situation was from a UI perspective, you are not asking your end users, your employees, you don't need to train them again. You can you can deploy the Copilot Studio as an agent into, let's say, your current communication channels like Microsoft Teams. So it just becomes another digital assistant in your Microsoft Teams environment, which means that for an employee, it's like they are messaging a colleague asking about a problem, right? So instead of them getting trained onto new technology, Copilot Studio can do that quite easily. So this resolves a lot of problems, like routine queries easily can be resolved. We can even extend the Copilot Studio build by, let's say, connecting to some of the line of business application or your Microsoft 365 to do simple workflows like password reset. So instead of a human getting into the loop to reset password for an employee can say, I want to reset my password, which can trigger a Power Automate through a connector, goes into 365, change the password, and send a notification back through a connector again. Very simple, but it does go ahead and resolves a lot of routine queries where a human needs to be involved. So in terms of architecture, sort of this is how the architecture looks like. User sends a prompt through Microsoft Teams, which invokes this agent, which is surfaced in Teams as such, uses inbuilt connectors like Microsoft connectors, Office connectors and SharePoint connectors to look at the knowledge sources, use the underlying language models, which are part of the Copilot Studio agent itself, the managed models, and then surface the information back or do a simple workflow if required, right? All good up until this point of time, no problems. Now, as the organization starts seeing the advantages of this bot or this agent, the requirement becomes more complex, right? So we got some more requirements where now what organization wants to do is use the same bot to diagnose technical issues by parsing system logs. So as a user, let's say my system is crashing multiple times, and what you usually would do is you will give access to system logs to an engineer, and they need to look at those system logs and then find the issue or run some tools on top of that. The other thing that organization also wants to do is want this agent to learn from previous support cases as such. So what are the patterns, right? Can we even further enhance the performance of the agent as such? Now, the kind of requirement goes beyond what Copilot Studio can do currently, right? And that is where instead of starting from scratch or creating another bespoke agent, we still use Copilot Studio as the UI or as the front end. But then we started looking at some of the Foundry solutions or services that we can leverage and bring into Copilot Studio. So later on, I will talk about two specific features in Foundry, but one of them I will talk about here, which is bring your own model to Copilot Studio. So Copilot Studio, as I said, has a number of managed models, but within Foundry, you can go ahead and pick up a model that you think is good for your use case, and then train and fine tune that model against your data. So what we decided to do here is we trained and deployed a specialized IT troubleshooting model that is fine tuned on historical incident data. And then we use the bring your own model feature of Copilot Studio and Foundry to bring that model in. So what happens in this scenario or the architecture, if you look at architecture a little bit here, simple queries were still going to Copilot Studio for resolution. So when a simple query comes in, find me find me something which is simple through the knowledge base, or do a simple password reset. Copilot Studio still takes all those initial queries as such. But when it becomes tricky, when more complex scenarios are there, again, Copilot Studio just seamlessly pass that to Foundry for it to do deep reasoning on top of that. Again, from an end user's perspective, nothing changes. They are still talking to the same agent. They don't know the difference. It is Copilot Studio and Foundry deciding together how do they pass the context through to Foundry once the message is received. So there are a bit of configuration changes on the Copilot Studio side of things to invoke the right model, a bit more instructions as well that goes into that. But beyond that, It is Foundry that takes care of all the deep reasoning as such. All right. So I will very quickly talk about what Foundry is. So Foundry is our one full AI and app agent factory or platform to build AI apps and AI agent. It has sort of native integration with your platform of choice to build things, whether you are pro code or low code. So as I said, you can use Copilot Studio to start building things and then extend with Foundry, or you can go full pro code using one of the developer IDs like GitHub's or Visual Studio and go and build bespoke sort of agents as such if required. With Foundry, you get access to 1900 plus models across different sort of partners and vendors, whether it's OpenAI, whether it's Claude now through Anthropic, whether it's Llama, DeepSeek, and so on and so forth. So you get a lot of different models. You just don't get the models, you also get what we call model playground, where even before using a model, you can test it out for your scenario. So you can provide a scenario, you can provide a prompt, and then the Foundry will provide a list of models ranked in the order in which it thinks it would be beneficial for your use case. You can also see rankings of model according to its performance, according to task adherence, according to some other sort of capabilities which are there. Then we have agent service, as I said, just like Copilot Studio, agent service is Foundry's way of orchestrate. So bringing all of the things sort of together. We recently introduced what we call Foundry IQ, which is the intelligence layer of Foundry. And then we also introduced tools. So think of tools as like what we currently have in Copilot Studio. Now we have more than 1400 tools within Foundry that gives you access to different platforms. You can see here like Adobe, Atlassian, SAP ServiceNow, and so on and so forth. So very similar to Connector and also to a number of different MCP servers as well, which are available within the Foundry sort of space. With Foundry, we also have control plane. So control plane is the way you evaluate or you test, you monitor, or you observe your AI solutions, which is quite important. So if you remember, Fushan spoke about this, that you need to learn, iterate and learn, and then make more changes based on that. And that is where control plane is quite useful, because what it does is you can create your own sort of metrics of evaluation against an agent as to how it is performing, monitor that, and then keep improving your agent's performance over a period of time. So keep sort of fine tuning your agent through instructions or select a different model and so on and so forth. With Foundry, it also provide enterprise-grade security, compliance, and governance by integrating with our security products like Microsoft Defender or Defender for AI, as well as Microsoft Purview. So for those of you who might not know, Microsoft Purview is our security product where you can do data cataloging, data classification, data labeling, and so on and so forth. So you can govern your data quite well, and Foundry integrates seamlessly with your data purview solutions as such. All right. So as I said, I wanted to talk about two specific features, which I think are quite important to bring Copilot Studio and Foundry together. One is the Azure AI search, and I will talk about that, why that is relevant for some of the use cases that we are seeing. And then, as I said, bring your own model, which I spoke about a little bit already. Right. So we all know that Copilot Studio can connect to a number of knowledge sources, right? We have sort of talked about that a little bit, whether it's SharePoint, which is a Microsoft data source, or whether it's a third-party data sources like ServiceNow, even SQL, Salesforce, whatever else. Wherever your knowledge is sitting, through Graph API or through connectors, you can bring those knowledge sources in Copilot Studio as such and provide real-time context to a large language model to reason over that data as such. It's an absolutely fantastic tool to do that. But because it's a SaaS product, Copilot Studio cannot make decisions for you, right? So it relies on underlying knowledge source to make decisions for you around what gets indexed, how does indexing work, what is the schedule of indexing, right? What are the size of chunk? Because with Copilot Studio, because we are using managed models, there are certain restrictions which are imposed on token limits, how much tokens you can pass in any prompt or can get back from the model, right? So all those things, Copilot Studio doesn't have any control of. If you want your agent to have control on those things, that's when we start looking at some of these solutions through Azure AI Foundry. And Azure AI Search is one such uh, capability within Foundry that provides that sort of capability where you can decide your own indexing. You can create your own indices. You can create your own vectors as well. So you can create your own vector database and provide more context. You can create your own semantic rankings against your data, your knowledge sources. So you can bring your knowledge sources in Foundry and then use Azure AI Search to do your own chunking of information, or you can create your own sort of uh, RAG-based solutions as such. So there are two ways of doing that. Of course, there is a low-code way within Foundry as well, as Foundry is trying to move towards sort of low-code. So you can use you can create vectorized indexes and then do RAG on that, which is retrieval augmentation generation. You can create that pattern as such, and you don't have to write a lot of code. So you can create custom RAG on top of that. If you do want to go completely pro code, we do have an SDK as well. So there is an AI search SDK that you can use to actually create your own custom indexes and go more deeper as a developer if you need to. And we have a use case with one of our customers where we are actually having to do that because we started off with a Copilot Studio and SharePoint as a knowledge source, but we ran very quickly. We ran into issues where the chunking methodology that SharePoint uses and what Copilot uses were not compatible. So yes, to prove the value initially, it was good because we used smaller documents or different documents to do that. But then we ran into situations where we have to move towards AI search. We're now using AI search to chunk bunch of documents and pass those documents back to the Copilot Studio as such. Lastly, I've spoken about this already. So you have number of models which are already available within Copilot Studio, but then you can also use models from Foundry or create your own models as well and bring those in the Copilot Studio side of things if you need to. Rami, how much time I have?
You've got time.
Oh, okay.
10:35. You're good.
Oh, I'm going fast. So there are two capabilities within the Copilot Studio where you can use this bring your model functionality. You can apply that to the prompts. So bring your model to prompts where you can actually go ahead and create or fine-tune model specifically for your task or for a scenario that you're wanting to solve. So you don't have to apply it to the entirety of Copilot Studio build as such. And then you can also use that functionality to generate the responses. So it can then generate custom responses based on a model of your choice or based on the fine tuning that you have done. So that, for example, if you're using some industry specific terms, you can do that. The other scenarios in which I think a custom model might be required if I go back with the Copilot Studio models that are there, we have a lot of restrictions around ethical AI, and you can't go around it because they are managed models. So you can't use some word. There is already some content filtering that is applied on the models. So if you use some of the phrases, some of the words which Copilot Studio sort of deem as malicious, harmful, it will filter those things out. But I work with public sector and I work with for example, New Zealand Police, New Zealand Defense Forces, some of the customs, and so on and so forth. And there are use cases where they want those things to be reported, right? So they need models which can take those things and infer them in the right way, not as malicious, not as harmful. But this could happen to people and they want to report stuff. And that's where with Foundry, you can actually create your own custom content filtering so that you can allow some of the words which otherwise you would, in a public space, you would deem as malicious or harmful or not right. But in certain scenarios, you would want people to be able to report those things in the right manner. All right. So before I sort of wrap up, last couple of slides that I have is around AI adoption and strategy. So this is on top of mind. I think Rami mentioned that at the start as well, that last year we were thinking about how to sort of build stuff But this time we are looking, and a lot of our customers are also sort of asking the same question: How do I adopt AI? What should be my strategy as such? So, if you again, based on my sort of personal experience, I think it is quite important for us to take away the myth that AI is going to take jobs, right? Number one. The second thing is AI is unsafe, right? I think that's one of the things, and especially working with public sector in Wellington, that comes quite a lot. Oh, what happens to my data? Or what if my data is just gone out? Or what if somebody creates an agent in my organization and take my files and just push it on the internet, right? Things like that. These questions come quite often. So I think the first thing that we usually want to do is prove the value and start gaining some trust from our customers, right? So instead of start building something which takes months and years to build, we start off with first-party copilots, right? So Microsoft 365 copilots. Or your role-based copilots, which are embedded into your products like Dynamics 365, we have sales, customer service, and so on and so forth. And we also have copilots in our developer tools like GitHub, for example. Those co-pilots are very easy way for us to prove the value to our customers. They get tangible benefits in terms of productivity, for example. They start trusting because we have inbuilt security and governance, role-based security that applies to all these co-pilots, the first-party one. So the grounding is on their data. I cannot go ahead and access somebody else's files to do something malicious about it, just if it is not shared. So to build that trust initially, the adoption is quite important, and that can happen through our SaaS-based product quite easily, where we use the first-party copilots to start building that trust. Once we have that trust with our customers, then customers are, oh, okay, this is good. Yeah, I can see some good productivity gains. My employees seems to be a little happy. How can I extend this? How can I move forward? What can I do next? And that's where we can look at things like Copilot Studio to start again fast, build something which shows the value of the platform and its connection to, let's say, their line of business applications if required. So we can extend to LOB applications like CRMs and ERPs through Power Platform connectors, through Action, through MCP servers, whatever is available or whatever is relevant for your use case, and show the value again that, oh, it can safely connect to your LOB applications as well and can get data or can work on behalf of your users in a safe and secure manner. Then we look at our custom sort of solutions where we start looking at innovation, where things that, let's say, 5 years ago were difficult to achieve. Now with AI, we can create models or we can fine tune models or we can look at specific use cases. By this time, customer also starts getting more and more like comfortable with AI and the use of AI in the organization. So they're also happy to sort of talk about, oh, this is a use case. What can we do? And then we can start having propositions around Azure platform and creating our own sort of applications using some of the custom development that we can do there. So I think this again, this is from left to right. In some of your conversations, your customer might be a little bit more mature, so you can actually, or they might have a use case where they're happy to sort of start off with Azure platform straight away as well. But in general, this strategy is something which might be sort of quite relevant as such. Okay, so the last bit is quite small. The screen actually, I did this image, but there is a link. This is available publicly as such as to when to use what, right? So we have so many different products and services from Copilots and the Copilots as well. We have so many Copilots. Then we have Copilot Studio. Then we have Foundry, and so on and so forth. So when to use what? There is sort of a decision tree here, which start off by identifying the use case and seeing looking at what that use case is for. Is it for personal productivity? Am I trying to solve my employees' productivity gains, or am I trying to solve something more business problem? And that is the first sort of decision point where you start looking at, if I'm trying to solve personal productivity, what products my employees currently use. If they are using something where a Copilot is already there. So if they are developer, I can help them with GitHub Copilot. If they are a customer service agent and are using Dynamics 365, I can use customer service Copilot as such. If they're using Microsoft 365, which all of them must be using, then they can use the Copilot within the Microsoft 365 as such. And then we start off sort of from that point onwards and then go down. I'm going to share this link because this is a very small image, might not be too visible on the screen, but this is like a way to sort of decide. Again, this is um, the answer will always be it depends. So take this as a guideline, not a hard coded rule as such when you have your conversations with your customers around this topic as to when to use what. Important thing is to be staying curious and ask questions. We have a full stack of no code tools to pro code tools, and we can use all of those tools together because we have a platform that sort of spans across all those tools. So, Micron, I think, is the best platform on which you can build agent, whether you are a no code or pro code or no code. Now, what are the right tools? It depends on the use case. So, do ask questions when you're talking to your customers around what they're trying to solve, what the use case is, and then so on. All right. With that being said, I'll wrap up by thanking the sponsors